Hello and welcome to Heaven's Gate. I'm Emmanuel. Here we share real-life stories of glimpses into heaven and hell, offering inspiring lessons from the Christian faith. If you're new, it might feel overwhelming at first, but I encourage you to stay with us until the end. Please subscribe and enable notifications to help us spread these powerful testimonies and God's message. Now, let's dive into the story. My name is Robbie, and this is the story of how my life changed in ways I never could have imagined. I grew up in a wealthy family, with parents who were often absent. They were busy businessmen, executives of a large online clothing company, always traveling, always on the phone, always focused on their successes. Most of the time I lived with my grandmother. She was everything to me, my guide, my confidant, and above all, my faith teacher. She wasn't one of those overly religious or fixated grandmothers. She was fair, balanced. She talked to me about God in a simple and sincere way, making me understand the importance of faith and love for others. She took me to church on Sundays, but never out of obligation. For her, faith was an act of love, a deep relationship with God that was manifested in how she lived her life. She helped the poor, made donations, and every action seemed dictated by compassion and the desire to do good. I still remember the long winter evenings when we sat by the fireplace. She told me how much God loved us, that even in the darkest moments we were never alone. When you feel alone, she would say, remember that Jesus is right there beside you. Those words gave me an inexplicable strength, as if I could face anything, but I never imagined how soon I would need that strength. When I was 15 years old, my grandmother fell ill. The tumor hit her quickly, and in just 2 months, she was gone. I couldn't understand why. I was devastated. She was the kindest person I knew, a woman who had lived her entire life for others. Why did God take her away so early? Why take such a pure and righteous soul? For the first time in my life, I began to doubt my faith. For weeks after her death, I cried every night. The void she left was unbearable. I felt I had lost not only my grandmother, but also that connection with God that she had passed on to me. I was angry, confused, and gradually stopped praying. If God was truly good, how could He allow such a thing? My parents, concerned for my emotional state, decided to take me with them on their business trips. For 10 years, until I was 25, my life became a continuous wander. 1 month we were in one country, the next month in another. I had no roots, no friends. And ironically, despite being surrounded by luxury and success, I felt more alone than ever. Sometimes, especially on the longest nights, I found myself praying. Even though I had lost faith, a part of me still clung to my grandmother's words. Jesus is always with you, she said, and I held on to that idea. I pretended He was there with me, just as she had taught me. But that feeling of emptiness was always there, and my faith wavered. Then something terrible happened. One day, while my parents were returning home from one of their trips, they were in a severe accident. My father died instantly, while my mother fell into a coma. Her condition was critical, but the mere thought that she was still with me gave me the strength to carry on. I prayed more than ever. I asked God to save her. I was willing to do anything to not lose her. After 2 months of anguish, one night her condition worsened. She didn't make it. My mother was gone too. I was alone. Completely alone. The death of my parents left me in a strange situation. Many told me I was lucky because I had inherited a very high bank account and numerous properties scattered around the world. But those material possessions didn't interest me. Nothing could fill the void I felt inside. I spent an entire year at home, alone. I no longer had the desire to live. I saw no purpose. For a while I thought my life was over there, lost between pain and apathy. But then, one day, I decided to take my life back. I couldn't let myself go like that. I decided to return to the city where I grew up with my grandmother. That place gave me a sense of peace, as if I could find a part of myself that I had lost. I joined a card game club, and gradually I started making new friends. It was a slow process, but little by little, moments of joy returned to my life. Then I met Anna, a wonderful girl who would become my partner. Her presence gave me serenity, and for the first time in a long time, I felt happy. When we discovered that we were expecting our first child, the emotion was indescribable. It seemed that life was finally getting back on a positive track. One day, after a long day working at the bar, I sat on the bed, exhausted. While I was there, I noticed the old rosary crown that my grandmother had given me as a child. I didn't know why, but I picked it up. Without thinking too much, I started to pray. I hadn't really prayed in years, but at that moment it seemed like the right thing to do. As I prayed, I felt as if everything around me faded away. It was a feeling of peace, of divine presence. I felt that Jesus was near, even though he had disappointed me in the past. Inside me, I felt I had to apologize, not to God, but to myself for having blamed him. I realized that, despite everything, there was a bigger plan, and that God had always loved me, even in the most difficult moments. One day, while I was in the car with Anna, we were going to the doctor for our first prenatal visit. She was 3 months pregnant, and we couldn't wait to see our child for the first time. We were excited, talking about the future and how our life as parents would be. But then everything changed in an instant. A black SUV suddenly cut us off. I didn't have time to react. The car skidded off the road and crashed into a tree. The last thing I remember was a feeling of impact. Then everything went dark. When I woke up, I was no longer on Earth. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in a place I had never seen before. Yet, there was something familiar about it. The first thing that struck me was the light. A warm, golden light that seemed to come from every direction, but it didn't blind me. Instead, it enveloped me in an indescribable sense of peace. There were no shadows, just this soft light that made everything bright and serene. It was as if the sky was painted in a deep yellow, a color that conveyed warmth, welcome, and a profound inner calm. I looked around, and what I saw left me speechless. In front of me was a vast expanse of souls, or people. I couldn't tell. They were ethereal beings, luminous, yet each of them seemed to have a distinct identity. They looked at me smiling, and their faces, though vague, radiated joy and peace. They were all facing me, as if they were waiting for me. I didn't understand what was happening, but there was no fear, only a deep serenity. Some of them approached me and welcomed me as if I were someone important, as if I were some sort of deity they had been waiting for. I heard their voices, or perhaps their thoughts, greeting me, blessing me. It was as if they had known me forever, as if my arrival was something special, predestined. I felt enveloped by that love, by that sense of belonging, but at the same time, I was confused. Who were they? Why were they acting like this? What was happening? At some point, I noticed that all the eyes turned in one direction. A light even more intense, brighter, began to manifest before me. It was like the sun, but it didn't burn. Its presence filled all the space, every corner of my being, and I immediately understood. It was Jesus. It wasn't just a light. It was the most powerful and reassuring presence I had ever felt. There was no doubt. I knew it. I felt it. Without anyone telling me, I knew that that glow, that figure taking shape before me, was the Son of God. I was paralyzed by emotion. The light became more defined, and slowly, it became a human figure. Jesus was there, in front of me. His face was luminous, but gentle, full of a calm and understanding that went beyond any imagination. Without even thinking, I knelt down. Everyone around me did the same, bowing in a deep act of reverence. Jesus approached me, smiled at me, and spoke to me. But his words didn't come out of his mouth as they normally do. I heard his voice directly inside me, as if every fiber of my being was listening and understanding what he was saying. "Robbie," he said, and his voice was like a melody that calmed every anxiety. "You are here because your faith has been exemplary. You believed in my words. You continued to trust in me, even in the most difficult moments, even when everything around you seemed to collapse. No pain, no suffering has shaken your love for me. And above all, you had the humility to ask for forgiveness for the moments you doubted. You always sought to remain close to me, even when your mind and heart were confused." I was overwhelmed. His words resonated inside me with a truth I had never experienced before. It was as if every single moment of my life had had a sense, a meaning that only now I was understanding. But there was still so much I didn't understand. I couldn't hold back the questions that crowded my mind. "But why, Lord?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why is there so much suffering in the world? Why do some people not believe in you? What awaits us here in the kingdom of heaven?" Jesus looked at me with infinite compassion. "Suffering exists because the world has been corrupted by sin, and many souls have chosen to turn away from me," he replied gently. "But every suffering has a deeper meaning, even if you don't always see it. I am always close to those who suffer, and my love is greater than any pain. For those who do not believe, my heart is open. I continue to call them, to seek them. Their salvation is always possible, as long as they have an open heart." Then, without even noticing it, I found myself in another place. We were inside a room that seemed made just for me. There were books on the shelves, card games on the table, even an old model car that I loved to build as a boy. The window overlooked a wonderful landscape, a green meadow that seemed to stretch to infinity, surrounded by majestic mountains and a blue sky that reminded me of my childhood dreams. "This will be your eternal home," Jesus said, watching me with affection. "Here, everything you love and that gives you peace is yours. It is a reflection of your soul, of your purity. You lived a life in which you did not let yourself be deceived by materialism, despite all that you had. You remained simple, pure of heart, and this is your reward." I was overwhelmed by emotion. It was exactly as I had always imagined. Every detail was perfect, as if someone had read my heart and realized every secret desire of mine. Jesus continued, "But now, Robbie, there is still much to do. I want you to return to earth and share this message. My return is near. You must prepare the souls. Tell them to confess their sins and not to lose faith, because everything will happen very soon." I turned sharply, frightened by a thought that suddenly struck me. "And Anna, our child? Are they okay?" Jesus smiled reassuringly. "They are fine, Robbie. Don't worry. Anna will give birth to a healthy child, and you will be there to care for him. Your family is protected." A wave of relief washed over me. The thought that Anna and our child were safe filled me with gratitude. I looked at Jesus one last time, trying to imprint every detail of that moment in my mind. "Remember," he said in a voice that seemed to echo in eternity, "faith is the most precious gift you have. Guard it and teach it to others." And with those words, everything went dark again. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. Anna was there beside me, safe and sound, and our child was secure. To all of you who every day find the strength to believe, even when the world seems to be falling apart, know this: your faith is precious. Every prayer whispered in silence, every tear shed in the darkest moments, every act of love and compassion you offer, everything is seen, everything has meaning. I know how difficult it is sometimes. I know how pain, loss, and suffering can make us waver, make us doubt. But Jesus has never abandoned us. He is with us, in every heartbeat, in every hurried breath. Even when we seem to be alone, lost in the darkness, He is there, beside us, holding our hand, and his promise has never been broken. He is coming back. The time is approaching. His return is closer than we can imagine. And you, who have chosen to believe, to persevere despite everything, are his people, his beloved children. Every suffering you have faced, every battle you have fought, has not been in vain. There is a reward, an infinite joy that awaits us beyond this world, a glory we cannot even imagine. Do not stop believing. Do not stop hoping. Hold your faith tightly, because it will be your anchor in the days to come. And when the sky opens and the King returns, all your sorrows will be erased in an instant. All wounds will heal, and you will be given a crown of glory that no one can take away from you. Be ready. Be vigilant, because the return of Jesus is near, and when he arrives, you will be called to stand by his side, as the victors you have always known you are. Do not lose faith. He has never left you, and very soon you will see him with your own eyes. And at that moment, every sacrifice, every pain, will have made sense. Now I ask you to share this message with those close to you, friends, family, or faith communities. Your message can bring comfort and inspiration to those in need, especially in these difficult times. Continue to spread light, and may your faith and commitment touch the hearts of many. May God bless you on your journey, and may he always guide you in your mission of faith.